Okay, so hello everyone. Um, I would like to present uh, the birth of Western philosophy. So I will explain to you some of the subtopics in the birth of the Western philosophy, which are mythos, logos, culture, science, and the role of literature. Okay, so everyone, Uh, some of you might think that why do we have to study the Western philosophy? Why not Eastern philosophy or Asian philosophy? What are some of the difference between Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy? And why do we need to begin with the Western philosophy? Well, if we want to compare between the Western and Eastern philosophy, somewhat there are no significant difference between the Western and Eastern philosophy. If we look at this table, we can see that the Western philosophy, the first one is emphasized on the paradigm of rationalist, empiricist, logical thinking, as where the Eastern philosophy it emphasizes the rational I'm sorry, what I mean is emphasizes on paradigm of intuition and feelings. So that is one of the difference between the Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy, whereas Western philosophy emphasizes once again the paradigm of rational, empirist, and logical thinking, whereas the Eastern is more emphasizing on the paradigm of intuition and feelings. So you can see the difference, right? But that doesn't mean that the Eastern philosophy does not talking about the rationalist nor empirist as well as logical thinking. If you study Asian philosophy or Eastern philosophy, they also produce thinking or thoughts that based on rational empiricist and as well as logical thinking, but the emphasis on their philosophy, Eastern philosophy, is on the paradigm of intuition and feelings, as where the Western intuition and feelings uh, it came up not until the modern era. So the history of uh, the birth of Western philosophy is from the ancient Greek. So it's like 1,000 years ago. The birth of the philosophy was born, and it emphasizes the rational empiricist and logical thinking as where as the time goes by and today if you are learning the Western philosophy, it also emphasizes on the intuition and feelings as where the Eastern philosophy emphasize on. So if we look at the uh, historical literature on the Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy. In Western philosophy, the emphasis of the literature works is emphasized on the character or the thinker along with the works. So, uh, because they have this proper methodology of documented the works of philosopher. So we know who says who thinks what, who says what, and so on and so forth. And even the historical background of the philosophers itself. As where if we compare to the Eastern philosophy, the Eastern philosophy's documented historical literature uh, is not as detailed as Western philosophy, because in Eastern philosophy they only emphasize on the works itself. So the result of the thinking process of the Eastern philosophy instead of the person or the philosophers itself. So these are some of the differences between the Western philosophy and the Eastern philosophy. And in any other than that, they are pretty much the same. So that means that if we are going to learn about the Western philosophy, there is no um, there is no standard which one we have to learn first. Is it Eastern philosophy or Western philosophy? In this case, I would like to present these. I would like to begin with the Western philosophies because in Indonesia we need to emphasize, or we need to learn more. We need to make a prioritize based on this condition right now. We need to prioritize on the rational as well as the logical thinking process. So that is why I present to you the Western philosophy instead of the Eastern philosophy. Excuse me. So one thing that you might one thing that you should know about the philosophy is that there is philosopher and there is philosophy expert. Okay, so philosopher in Indonesia we call it filsuf, and as where philosophy expert we call it in Indonesian ahli filsafat. Okay, so there is a difference between filsuf and ahli filsafat. There is a difference between philosopher and philosophy expert. What is the difference? Well, philosopher is the person who definitely live he or live their life in philosophical way. Philosopher is definitely always implemented the philosophical perspective. Okay, whose philosophical perspective? Well, their own philosophical perspective. Okay, so they are doing philosophy as they live their life. So there is a philosopher. Okay, as where philosophy expert is someone who knows the system as well as the history of philosopher thinking. So philosophy expert, they know and sometimes they master the philosopher's thinking. Okay, the philosopher's thinking. The philosopher, on the other hand, he or she always write down their thinking result, either in the journal or in the books. Most of the time in the books, they write their thoughts so that people can learn it and people can understand it. And philosopher, most often they write their thinking process, their thoughts on the text, is because they want to make a better world, based on their perspective, of course. But there is the other discussion that we can discuss later on. But for this moment, we know that philosophy expert uh, knows the system, as where the philosopher, they might not knowing the system and the history of philosophy, because what they do is just doing the philosophy. What they do is just thinking and observing and make a speculation and writing down and make a discussion and so on and so forth. While philosophy expert, they learn from the philosopher. They learn the way philosophers thinking. Okay, but beside the differences between philosopher and philosophy expert, in we need to know that philosophy expert can also be a philosopher, while philosopher can also be a philosophy expert. So it depends on their action, yeah, their action, or depends on how they live their life. Excuse me. So for instance, philosopher can be a philosophy expert where he or she produces their ways of thinking, but at the same time, their ways of thinking it can be produces by the synthesis of the other philosophers' thinking process, or the philosopher, they can produce his or her own thinking or her own thought, but at the same time he or she also learn how the system and the history of philosophy works, and so vice versa. Okay, so this is something that you might want to know, that when people say that, oh, he's a philosopher, oh, she's a philosopher, well, it depends on, we need to ask the philosopher, or we need to ask him or her whether he or she has produced um, uh, their philosophy, their own philosophy. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the factors where philosophy was born. So here, the first one, philosophy was born because the system of political system that is implemented during that time, specifically during the ancient Greece. Okay, in the Western philosophy, if you talk about Western philosophy, then it is the time where the ancient Greece, implemented the democratic political system. So, because of this democratic political system, uh, the people in ancient Greece have the freedom to think about everything they want to think. And not only that, but also to discuss what they think with the people they want to discuss with. So the atmosphere of political democratic system uh, had made these people have the freedom to think, to discuss, and to develop, to shape their perspective. So this is why philosophy was born during at that time. And the second factor is because there was a cultural enculturation that occurs in trade when the people interact one another with various cultures. So during at that time in the ancient Greece, people always trade goods for other people outside their countries. And the consequences when meeting people from different countries with different cultures is that they learn something new when they talk about, when they try to express their thoughts, when they try to discuss with the people who has a different culture. So it's really important for us or for you to not have a it's really important for you to have a different to have a friends who are different culture than you are, so that way it can you can gain a lot more information from a different perspective, different culture, different values, as well as you can gain more knowledge. And the third one is that, and also the fourth one is that the disposition of curiosity and amazement, as well as the dissatisfied, or I would say that skeptical, being skeptical. Yeah. So yeah, it might be the correct one is this, not the correct one, but even further explanation about this dissatisfied, being curiosity, being curious, being dissatisfied, being amazed towards something, is because you have this. skeptical disposition. What I mean by this skeptical disposition is not like um, radical skeptical, but instead it's more like soft skeptical, maybe. Yeah. What I mean by soft skeptical is not like, what I mean by skeptical here is that you not you don't easily believe in something on what other people said, on what the information you read, everything you like you have a distance to criticize of whatever you want to read or to understand, so you don't get easily believe in something. So that is what I mean by soft skeptical. So because of the disposition of skepticism, philosophy can born, okay, back then, along with the curiosity, along with the amazement, along with the dissatisfied with the standard mythological system. So this is a good way to think about in Indonesian society, where uh, mostly with young generation, or maybe in general people in Indonesia. Uh, if we look back to the 2019, where the hoax information, where the disinformation um, becomes or spread more widely among the people in Indonesia, and because they don't have a skepticism attitude, they don't have a curiosity, they don't have an amazement, they don't have dissatisfied, then then they are easily to be tricked. They are easily to be tricked because they are easily to believe in something that they don't know actually whether it is right or wrong. Okay, so the last one is you should probably know about the shifting from mythos to logos. So the process of shifting from mythos to logos is actually uh, the bigger scenario, let's put that way, that philosophy was born. Well, in the beginning, if we look at back to the ancient Greece society, they believe in mythology. Okay, so this is the mythology. So people who are believing in the mythology, they only live they only can live inside this circle. Okay, while because of the curiosity, because of the skepticism, because of the amazement, because they don't easily believe in something, they put so much questions. They always questioning things, especially for mythology. Then uh, the philosopher, they using their logos. Okay, logos is also named as logical. Okay, logic. Okay, rational thinking and logical thinking, that is logos. Okay, so by using the rational thinking and logical thinking, people at that time, specifically in particular for philosopher, they don't believe in they don't easily believe in the mythology. Okay, so they use rational thinking as well as logical thinking, so they can uh, get out from this area. Okay, so they can get out from this area with the help of literature. So the job excuse me, so the job of literature is that the literature people, they write something, uh, they write mythology for something that can people can understand, because mythological the system of mythology in ancient Greece, it's not really easy to understand. It fulls of it's a lot, it contains full of symbolizes symbol it contains full of symbols that you don't know the meaning of it. So the task for the literature people back then is trying to write it down so that the people can understand what is the mythos, what is the myth trying to talk about. So the philosopher, when they use logos, logical and rational thinking, they also have the references by the literature. So philosopher cannot be separated with the literature. Okay, cannot be separated with the literature. Now, so this process to get out from shifting from mythos to logos, to get out from the system of mythological, is to go out to logos, is called demythologizing. Okay, the demythologizing. So this is the classical era. So nowadays, in the modern era, we can see that because of the positivism, the people who usually back then learning about philosophy, learning how to shape their rational perspective as well as their logical perspective, they use positivism to increase or to enhance the science, the knowledge, the social, cultural, political. All right, the social, cultural, political. So if you look at this graph very detailed, you notice that there are there has been shifting from mythos to logos and philosophy to positivism and to science. Okay, to science. So philosophy, it's they still want to go back to mythos by the literature, but science, because of the positivism, does not want to go back to philosophy, or even not just philosophy, but mythology. Okay, because positivism, as you might, as you will probably later will learn about positivism. Positivism doesn't want to have something that is out of based on the fact. Okay, so all they want to know, the source of knowledge is the based on facts, no more, no less. While philosophy is not only based on facts, but also based on intuition and feelings and imagination, where the mythology is using, right? Is using. So this area is called mythologizing. So because of they are very strict on their methodology, their methods. So that brings their mindset, their point of view, because they don't want to go back to philosophy, neither they don't want to go back to mythos. That brings this area, even science, is also another or new mythos. All right. So, in order to do that, philosophy trying to understand what happened in science and try to make a balance between science in the positivism perspective by using some of them by using the critical literature. Okay, so everyone, so these are the shifting, the shifting from mythology to logical perspective in philosophy. So at the end, there is a great quote from one of the philosopher, modern philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche. He said that a great truth wants to be criticized, not idealized. So this is what happened when you idealized your truth, but not want to trying to evaluate and there's to see something, to see whether the truth that we believe in has a weakness, has a greatness, has a strength, and so on and so forth. These consequences, these will lead to a consequences where people will do some bad things in order to protect their uh, idealized truth. All right, so I think that's it for the history of Western philosophy. And I hope that you can understand about this. And if you don't, if you want, if you have any questions, you can text me or you can have a you can ask your questions in the class or outside the class. I would be more happy to discuss about this later on in the future. All right, that's it. Thank you.